Yeah, so my reputation precedes me. Okay, you're going to find out just how much I like a fight. I guess I'll tell you a story about something that happened when I was 20. Bit of an introduction. My section, which isn't aided by any slides because I'm not good at that. I do words, not pictures. I'm sorry. Is shops, cops, and pop-ups, and why urban culture lies between the rules. I was listed as a publisher. I guess is who I am. And that for me really sums up what I'm passionate about. And really it is my identity because I make this magazine, this one here, it's called Collect, it's small, it's $5. Small price tag. And I make that with a very talented graphic designer named Adam Johnson who, yes, cajoled me into it. I had bad experiences publishing. Print media is difficult to say the least. I also curate a gallery that I own with my girlfriend, Farron Foster, and in both of these capacities, I guess I see my job as publisher, as curator, to put people, I guess, on a stage and in the public realm where they can express their ideas, have them heard, and have them critiqued and talked about, because I think that's also a part of it. So I was really happy when I was asked to present here at TEDx, and the title of my presentation, The Shops, Cops, and Pop-ups, because for me the shops that line the big promenades or the back alleys or the side streets and cul-de-sacs, if I was given to making metaphors, I might even say that each shop is a page in a magazine, where overall a city should have a cohesive tone, style and identity reflected through the different content across its pages. A city should tell the story of its inhabitants. Luckily, I'm not given for such indulgent literary devices. But it's simple, isn't it? Without active shop fronts, you've got a ghost town. It doesn't matter how many people travel to work each day to the central business district. If there isn't a raft of small businesses on the ground floor, you're looking at a pretty boring and what I would say an utterly dead city. So that's shops. I'll come back to them. Cops. The police are a big part. The men in blue, the women in blue, everyone in blue, that's the colour they've chosen. They really help shape a city's identity, and I think you can't look at a great city like London or New York without thinking of their police and how they're policed, and I think London and New York are policed entirely differently. I'm not sure now post the bombings in London whether cops are now carrying guns, but previously they weren't. New York, it's a very different scenario. They're gatted up. So here's a story that I hope none of you would know because I've kept it quite secret. But when I was 20, I'm now 28, I was arrested for loitering. It wasn't actually loitering, that's not the term they use, it's called failure to cease loiter, whereby police are given the power to disperse crowds that they feel are unruly or are frightening to the public, and they use the threat of arrest to disperse these crowds. I was completely sober. I gave up drinking between the age of 19 and 21. It's a family bet. I failed previously. It was supposed to be all the way up until 21, but I got caught on camp drunk at high school. So anyway, not a great role model, but I guess what I saw were 5 very frightened police officers, and obviously I'm completely sober, they're sober, but I could see that they were entirely threatened by the scenario. It wasn't more than 20 people, but they were responding to a violent altercation which had since quelled by the time they got there. And they started pulling people aside, arresting people that weren't involved, and it was just a really emotional and upsetting scenario considering that it was almost entirely unnecessary. And my best friend at the time, was very drunk as opposed to me, and he sort of stood up for the people that were being harassed and being sort of, it was a very divide and fall strategy that the police used, and he sort of started calling them on that behaviour, and they started whipping out this phrase, if you don't cease loiter, we will arrest you, blah, 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 and he sort of thrown up his hand and just called this guy a swear word and a power tripper alongside of that, and immediately he was grasped, thrown against a roller door, he was in handcuffs, and he was completely non-violent as well. So for me it was upsetting to see someone who I love just treated in that way. And so I stuck around and got arrested too. The police have a job to do. It's a tough job, one that's absolutely imperative to the survival of a highly populated area such as a city. My friend was drunk and he was being a loudmouth, and that's sort of not really an arrestable offence in my opinion, but the police still, they've got a job to do. My decision at the time was that the police's action was wrong. Without huge political unrest, I guess, in our city, such as other countries around the world. Remember, I was 20. Without the civil unrest, without much to complain about being a white middle-class male, I sort of jumped at that opportunity to rebel in a way that was real. Like this was the threat of arrest. At the time, I was pretty much just showing my mate, that I thought he was right to challenge their authority. But now, 8 years later, I guess I have a different take on it, and that's where it sort of comes back to city and citizen, because it's been sort of mentioned before, but I think the citizen really, more than built environments, streetcars and everything, the person, the user, the consumer, as well as the producer, are really important. So, it's not that the police were wrong to do what they did, but certainly now that I own a business just off of Hindley Street, this art gallery, I can appreciate what they're up against and why they need these powers. But what does getting arrested for disobeying the police have to do with the city of the future? For me, like I said, it's everything. A city, a thriving city, strong and confident cities are so because they are full of citizens. Here in Australia, in Adelaide, I don't know if we currently appreciate what it means to be a citizen. Citizens stand up for one another, even though they may not know each other. And anyone who knows me or has heard me speak before will probably have heard me quote Jane Jacobs in her book on the death and life of great American cities. And for her, she sort of says that the first fundamental of successful city life is that people must take a modicum of public responsibility for each other, even if they don't have ties to one another. And she says it's a lesson that you can't learn by being told. So I'm sorry, I'm telling you, I can't really show you, but it's that lesson that you can only learn when it happens to you. And I guess for people that are sitting here today, the 100 of you or whatever, I'm sure a lot of you drink coffee, and the only way I can sort of get to that point is the feeling you get when you walk into your cafe and the barista calls you by name. He says, "How you going, Josh?" And just a flat white takeaway, isn't it? And I'm like, yes, how do you know that? Because he does care about you, because he's your business. And so you sort of see that intersection again between citizens, shops, and not so much authority, but we'll get there. In the case of my friend's arrest, I was acting out of love for him, obviously, which is different to being separate from that. I felt that he was acting on behalf of people, and the reason he was arrested is because he was trying to defend those people that he didn't know. But I think that, what I was trying to do by getting arrested was take away that power and show the police, or show myself that power that they have isn't the highest power, and the laws that potentially are in place that guide our cities aren't always right. And I think I know, or I believe, that a successful city and the culture they manifest is built on the actions of its citizens and the ability of ordinary people to stand up for what they know to be right, and the type of city that they want to be in, and the type of city that I guess they want to contribute to. Of course, you guys all have the right also to disagree with me. But what I'm hinting at here is that a vibrant city, a city that feels alive, is one full of consumers. It isn't just consumers, it's got to be the producers as well. It's the city that is balanced between consumers and producers that will be successful. If we're all out there shopping, it's impossible, because someone has to create, what we're shopping for. The city of the future isn't created by government alone, but surely by the population who together agree, what we value and why we value that. A population, in my opinion, or a citizenry, they don't ask for change, but they simply go out and make it. And so that sort of leads nicely into the third portion of the title of my presentation, pop-ups. Does anyone know what a pop-up is? Hands up, who knows what a pop-up is? Yeah, that's pretty much 100 people. But yeah, essentially and traditionally, it's a temporary installation or even an interruption of commercial relevance. Matt Davis also showed an example with the parklets of one that's not commercial. But Adelaide's had a few of them now. My gallery has even hosted a few young people that wanted to try something different but didn't want to sign up for a 5-year lease. And most recently, though, they've manifested themselves in the food trucks that are around our city, and they're all the rage at the moment, which is great. Again, hands up if you've heard of burger theory. That's good for those that haven't. I pity your taste buds. But essentially, the story of burger theory is the story of two guys, Rob Dean and Dan Mendelsohn. They flew to Brisbane and bought a catering truck, which is essentially a truck with a kitchen attached to the back of it. And they drove it all the way from Brisbane back to Adelaide with the idea and the intention to essentially sell gourmet food direct to the hungry public and bypass the rent. So the idea was that they could subsidise the food because they weren't paying for rent. So the best quality meat and ingredients could be passed directly to the consumer. That's sort of the basis of food truck movements worldwide. So that's what they wanted to do here. Up until these two guys and their lofty ideas settled on Adelaide, the pie cart was our only rendition. But Dan and Rob, separate to the pie cart, they didn't want to be pinned down to one location. For them, the beauty of the food truck is its roaming license, and that's how they work in New York and LA. I think LA has got in the thousands of food trucks at least. So the onus kind of fell to the Adelaide City Council. Rob and Dan approached them with this idea, what they wanted. And it wasn't really certain to Rob and Dan whether the council would support it, or even if they could, because there's so much litigation around public realm, public safety, risk aversion, and all those things that come with, again, the law and protecting us, I suppose. What happened in the meantime is that one of our writers at Collect, Clara Sankey, contacted me, said, "This sounds like a story," and I said, "Absolutely, that's a story we'd cover." So we went ahead and organised a cook-off in Ebenezer Place and took some photos and put it in the magazine. So what I'm getting to here is these networks of people. So Burger Theory, it's not a shop, but ostensibly we were acting illegally, cooking burgers, taking photos. One of the residents of Ebenezer Place came down and thought we were selling drugs or something. Not that a burger smells like drugs, but anyway, we moved along, published the story. It came out in this edition, which is only our third edition at the time. And one of our stockists, Josh Baker, who remembers my name and my coffee at Coffee Branch, he read the story and he said, "That's amazing, can we do that on Lee Street?" And I told him basically of the problem with doing this, and he said, "Well, let's put it on this laneway that we own, and therefore, we can bypass that sort of council public realm scenario because I own the land, or my landlord owns it, and we can get around it that way." And so I think after the truck rolling up for 30 minutes, they had a lineup of 50 people and they sold out while people were still joining the end of the line, and that was the first real public outing in the sense that Burger Theory wanted to do. And so that was a collaboration or a conspiring of three sort of businesses coming together to do something ostensibly illegal, but was entirely justified by the consumer demand. So it's interesting because I think that, I'm a firm believer that urban culture is born in the lawless laneway where everyone looks out for each other and society's best interests, which obviously in this case are delicious, delicious hamburgers. Thanks.